What's happening? Benton here. I think I want to do my reading. Just a moment here. Pulling up the Bible app. Oh, man. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit forever. What's up? We saw the 0 go to a 1 briefly. That's all right. I don't know how much I have to yap about. That was a bit of a wild stream yesterday in certain ways. Reflecting back on it in my memories, I definitely was happy with some of the way that I covered some of the topics. And then, as often happens, I remember several times that I allowed myself to get too distracted and started down a path or started to tell a story only to something happened that drew my attention. Sometimes it's walking around. Probably could have done the one yesterday from the car instead of walking, but I wanted to walk around. What's up, Rick? I'm not going to read the chat too much right off the bat. Yeah, I'm feeling a little funky today. I don't know that I can blame the walking around and yapping on the live stream necessarily, but it's probably too many days in a row of feeling pretty much fucking fantastic. I would imagine. Not that that's a thing, right? Too much of a good thing, but I think maybe by contrast, a little bit of pain in the tissues, I'm sure, with the age of many of the folks around these parts. Although at a certain point, I noticed the audience began to skew slightly less old at a certain point. But yeah, I think I had noticed recently um, that I've been feeling, and a lot of it is again on the heels of this true knowledge of self and all of these things I've been talking about for the last couple of months. But way less tension than normal, and would not have generally described myself as a tense person. Somewhat high strung, at times, but yeah, I guess I'd gotten so relaxed for so long. Maybe this is just by contrast because I feel fine. I mean, I feel fine overall, but um, probably stirred up some resentments and some repressed traumas yesterday, right? Uh, on the live stream, I do tend to get a little angry at the way things are at times. Even understanding the delusory nature of the realm, it's still possible to get swept away and too strongly identifying with what's going on here. And it's dysfunction to the people, right? That's the thing. This notion of power to the people. It's actually the theme I see is dysfunction. Um, I see dysfunction before I arrived into this delusory realm. That was apparently the history, was a dysfunction. And when I observe pretty much any aspect of humanity, whether it's the way people choose to live their lives, the way they interact with their phones, their devices, their social media, the internet, the way they conduct themselves, the way they drive their automobiles, how they earn money, all roads lead to dysfunction, as far as I can tell. Now, what's the meaning of the word dysfunction? Let's see. That can be important. Adversarial. Let's go to that too, real quick. So that was already on the screen. Adversarial. That was something I was talking about yesterday. Adversarial, an adjective characteristic of or in the manner of an adversary, combative, hostile, opposed. Now, my contention is that this realm itself is an adversarial realm, meaning combative, hostile, and opposed. Now, but opposed to what? Well, with my assertions that the realm is based in antithesis, and the proposition or thesis being, um, the validity, the authority, the power of the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit, what some may refer to as God, or creation itself, or the universe, whatever that force is, and that I now know that that's what I am. My essence is one with that force, and that my daily experiences are all based in delusion. The dictionary definition of the word delusion, we'll probably have to get to that in a moment. Um, so that's the adversary, right? Is the antithesis. So I am the enemy of the antithesis solely based on my own nature, right? My nature being one with the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit. That alone is enough to put me in the crosshairs of this realm. In fact, it seemingly it's the purpose of the realm itself is to set itself up in opposition to what? To what I am. And again, solipsism has to be on the table. But the possibility, right? Uh, the possibility that in fact it is Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity, if anybody's familiar with that reference, you know, uh, from my perspective, I'm going with solipsism. The idea that in a certain context, I effectively am the only being, operating in the realm, right? Um, but then in a thought experiment, something that I can never truly know, the idea that, the rest of the humans, or the majority of the humans, or the majority of the beings that, appear as in human form, in fact are possessed of, or in possession of, Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, right? Which, as far as I can tell, is a mockery. It's the adversarial realm is so adversarial that there's been a song stuck in my head on some level, going back to probably the 1970s or the early 1980s. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, right? And just how powerful of a tune that is in certain ways, right? To me, I now view that as a mockery of humanity itself, right? Um, yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Never a dull moment out here. Um, endowed with this beautiful mind of mine, right? I suspect, again, pushing solipsism to the side, if there are in fact other beings with their own powerful minds, I suspect that their minds are potentially beautiful as well. Is it even necessary or helpful to go through the reasons why uh, I've seen fit to utilize my beautiful mind and in some ways max it out? I wasn't given the most high horsepower engine over here necessarily, lest we forget. Hmm. And more I see the behaviors of the general public. It really is a willful ignorance, in my view. Um, in some ways, now in other ways, they really are uh, quite dumb, the general public. But I'm certainly starting to have an idea. There's certainly an idea that many folks are. Uh, seems to be a common strategy where many folks will intentionally sort of downplay their abilities and don't want to show what they're actually capable of, which also says a lot about what dysfunction. Imagine people on the one hand giving lip service to the validity of the corporate structure, the education system, you know government, all of these various systems of man, all this bullshit that's been pumped up our backsides about how awesome, we are as Americans. And I mean the masses of people in the United States, solely based on when and where we were born. Does that even seem possible? Right? American exceptionalism, mom and apple pie, and all of this, and just how great, America and how awesome it supposedly is to be an American. And I kind of lost my point there, but I'm starting to understand that there's a reason for this, and if it doesn't come back around right away, there's some sort of reason. Some of it is that the level of focus required to talk in this manner. I'm not always willing to put out quite that much, right? Not always willing to dig deep, um, because whatever I am going through today, whatever I'm feeling, certainly some of that was stirred up uh, because of the live stream yesterday. But I don't think it's entirely a bad thing. I would describe it as upheaval, some sort of turmoil, an internal uh, like an internal upheaval and a turmoil, um, that seemingly will resolve in a way that most likely will represent healing. And that's, part of me testifying yesterday. And, I would say at this point, I'm effectively healed of all of this digestive stuff. Now, if I was to go back to eating the seed oils and, certain foods, I don't think it would take very long before my health would start going backwards. But at least in the near term, as long as I'm uh, mainly avoiding the bad oils, as far as I can tell, I'm back to normal. Hallelujah, right? Uh, praise Almighty God in the mighty name of Christ Jesus. Jesus Christ is Lord. That healed me, whatever that is, right? Whatever that is, healed me. Okay. I don't have, I'm too busy engaged in real world effectiveness. And when I say real world, I really mean within my own energy sphere. I'm too busy being productive and effective within myself to concern myself with, oh, well, there needs to be panel debates and we need, a so-called truth or a so-called truth community, and year after year after year of panel channels, debating things like religion, Christianity, Christ, and all of this. I don't give a fuck. Something I'm choosing to refer to as Jesus Christ has healed my physical motherfucking body. That's good enough for me, right? do I really need to have? Do I really need to put myself through this gauntlet of all this rigmarole of where I need to let 15 different learned scholars? Yeah, right. People LARPing as if they know something. Do I really need 15 to 20 of those bozos putting their own stink, on this idea of Benton being healed, right? And for folks, shout out to the chat for folks who were around for the very extended period of time in which I was seriously, physically, motherfucking ill on a daily basis, right? Uh, you know, this is a miracle in a way, right? And the reality is, being that physically ill on a daily basis, that is the healing, right? I think that's something that, and I won't say we, right? I think that's something that people like myself who, I filled my head full of intellectual knowledge. By the time the general public got on the internet, I already had many, many years of filling my head with information. And even before I got on the internet in 1994, which is as an early adopter of the internet, I had many years of filling my head full of information. And even to me, uh, years of developing my own spiritual practices, years of all of these things, and it took that long to eventually dawn on it, on me rather, that yeah, the illness, like, that is the healing process. It's the thing is, if the person is so unhealthy and they're so stressed out, and I'm not referring to me, and their diet is so poor, they don't get proper rest, they continue to run themselves ragged in their daily life. Well, it's just a constant state of illness that's not healing, right? So presuming that the individual, myself in this case, actually changes their lifestyle as I did, got proper rest, got proper sunlight, figured out what I could eat, what I couldn't eat, right? Made myself eat, had no appetite for 9 months, was not hungry at all for 9 months. And in fact, when I would, if I knew I needed to do something and not feel bad, I just wouldn't eat. That was, for a long period of time, uh, the best way for me to make sure I was going to feel okay was to literally not eat any food, right? And all of that, you know, step by step, bit by bit, created, the situations and the circumstances and the environment for the healing. So whatever I'm feeling in my tissues, whatever this is, it's most likely the healing process. Probably tomorrow go right back to feeling great. And how many of you folks have your own versions of all of this, right? And then back to the dysfunction of the society, how is society set up to deal with that? Well, in the only way that society's set up to deal with anything, it's to turn it into a business, right? And so back to the idea of the realm itself is adversarial, right? It's in fact, it's adversarial against my own nature. And how is it adversarial against my own nature? By making everything into a business, no matter what it is, right? And furthermore, um, crafting society, crafting psychology, crafting education to where 100% of all of my experiences as a young person that were guided and steered by adults was 100% in service of business, 100% across the board. The very design of all of the structures that are involved with a child uh, becoming an adult, especially in America, that's 100% involved with business. There's no part of that that's not business. So how in the world, how is it possible to bring function out of that? Because the function will only ever be in the context of what? Business. So if you're telling me that society will never ever aim at a goal that would, the goal itself would represent functionality that would serve the people outside of the context of business, I'm here to tell you that will never happen. It's never happened, number one. It has never happened, number one. Okay. And what I mean by that is, until someone proves to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that it has ever happened, I'm going to go ahead and consider that there's no precedent for it. And unprecedented is a strong term. It's pretty close to the term impossible, actually. Right. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying that I'm not even willing to consider the possibility until I see it happen. Right. Or someone can convince me, well, actually, here's what happened in the past. We still have these eyewitness accounts. Here's the proof. Right. I need to be convinced of these things. And it's interesting being in my car and doing this live stream and parked on the street, and it's nothing but cars parked on the street. And then there's two different people have parked in front of me, and both of them have spent extended periods of time at their vehicle just doing whatever they're doing, which is fine. But then mathematically, when I look around and I can see all the other cars parked, how is it that where I've parked, running my loud ass mouth doing a live stream, how is it that I'm the only car that has a car parked directly in front of them where a person's just, I don't know what they're doing, digging through their trunk, getting organized, which this is normal activities. I do this also, right? It's just the curiosity factor of how is this happening, where I'm putting these particular vibes out into the ether like that can never be a coincidence, right? And in fact, I almost started the engine and pulled up a spot. And as I was considering whether or not to do that, this fellow parked and just, again, it's completely fine. But, looking around, it's like, how am I just happen to be in this area and where this one thing is happening and it's not happening anywhere else? It's almost like my activities unlock the realm itself, right? Now we're back to what? Deja vu, surrealism, right? Unreality, or, the notion of everything being fake. Well, no, it's not fake. It's empty or vacuous, which is probably worse, actually, than fake, right? But again, of no substance. So, I'm seeing now based on what I understand the realm to be, and make no mistake, my understanding of what the realm is at this point is almost entirely based on what I know myself to be. And, this is the greatest tool I've ever discovered for making sense of exactly what in the fuck is happening day to day around me, is the reality of, oh, this is all adversarial. It's all, it's all set up in opposition to, now here's where the targeted individual stuff fails, not to Benton because of Benton's characteristics. See, not because of Benton's skin color, how he looks, how he talks, what his parents did for a living, the part of the country he hails from, who his famous ancestor was, all of these things. See, that's where the targeted individual people get bogged down psychologically. It's just some idea that, well, there's something so special about them. Well, there is something special about them if, in fact, they are possessed of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity. What I would say is, okay, what are they doing with it? Because ultimately, again, back to yesterday's stream, what's important here is how I perform within a delusion, right? As far as I can tell, I'm putting on a performance, this idea that all the world's a stage. So it's not a realm set up in opposition to Benton's psychology, his defective personality. Oh, and by the way, is that the first by the way of the stream? Even the idea of a defective personality, that should look how it wasn't that long ago, maybe 6 months ago, I attempted to do an entire stream about my defective personality and just defects of personality in general. And look at that. That is to be incorrectly identified. That was me viewing personality based on the dysfunction of the realm, right? There's nothing wrong with my personality, uh, other than perhaps, or the things that are wrong with it, I would say is probably actually over socialization, to, again, what systems of business. It all comes back to those systems of business. And look at the Cold War propaganda makes a lot more sense now through that lens. But let me go back, because I know I just started to make a point and I failed to completely bring it home. So let me see if I can backtrack a little bit. Oh yeah, the defects of personality. Even that was, I was improperly identified with thinking, okay, and it's a victimization in a way, because it was my idea of, here I am struggling and coping day to day. And, in spite of all of these positive characteristics, I have this one thing, the defective personality, that it sort of renders all of the others null and void in a way. The talents, the good looks, and all of these other, athleticism when I was younger, all of these things, it sort of renders them all null and void. And, nobody ages out of being a weirdo. In fact, it's quite the opposite. People tend to age into that, unfortunately. Um, and I get it. Like, I understand that, but my personality is not the problem, because, and I realize this because I've developed myself to the point where when I meet someone with a defective personality, I have no problem interacting with them. I have no problem dealing with them, because I'm able to observe them, and then I'm able to adapt to what are not even defects. They're only defects what, in the context of business. Because when we look at, you know I'm not 6 foot tall, but the reality is, the way that people lie about their height, I might as well say I'm 6 feet tall. Now, that's not my style, but based on what people consider to be 6 feet tall, I'm 6 feet tall, right? Conventionally handsome, whether folks want to believe that or not, it's fine with me. Um, I see how people respond. It really doesn't even matter. Yes, I'm from the South, and I have an accent and all of this, but, come from something of a prominent family, right? There were connections, if I had wanted to pursue, connections through fraternities, or, whoever my grandfather and his people would have known back in the day, right? There was all of this was there to potentially go out and be successful. See? Now, when we hear the term successful, that only exists in the context of business, right? And in fact, to this day, one of the most viewed live streams on this channel was called "This Is Success," where I got a little tired of people poking fun at me, and I think a lot of it had to do around me, in some ways not having a pot to piss in financially, and I used the definition of terms and words, and I made my case that, well, actually, based on the meaning of the motherfucking term success, my life, this is success. Like, what I'm doing is a success, and folks were witnessing it at the time, right? But as soon as the term success is uttered, the psychology, right, that was designed, within Moloch's machine, in service of Moloch's machine, right, the system of business and industry. um the moment any of us hear the term success, we only ever think in business terms, right? That's the only way to think about it. In fact, so just imagine just the amount of work to be done within someone's psyche, just to get that person to the point where they can actually consider the term success outside of a business or a monetary context. Like, just the amount of growth, of focus, determination, concentration, mental energies, maybe meditation, right? Just to train the mind out of only identifying with monetary success, right? And I think if you just went out and talked to random people in public, which that's not even a thing anymore, right? But if you were able to talk to some of your acquaintances or maybe just people you have a rapport with, I don't think the average person even would understand that there is a possibility of the term success existing outside of a monetary or a business context. I really don't. I don't think they would know what you're talking about. I'm not sure people, generally speaking, are even able to think at all. Well, now that's true also. I don't think, generally speaking, can people even think whatsoever. Critical thinking, is that even a thing? But whatever is even passing for critical thinking these days. um yeah, I'm just not sure I'm not sure it's a thing that can happen, right? So I'm dedicated to every single morning when I wake up, some part of my early part of my day is spent sort of reconfiguring proper identification, right? Realizing that, oh, I'm waking up into this delusory realm, and my day is going to be spent, you know, in a realm, and folks are now, for some reason, the car alarm is going off of the car in front of me. Of course, nothing has happened. Now, my voice is loud. It's not that loud. So how long is this going to happen? Shout out to hypervigilance. Okay, there we go. And some of these people are so paranoid. I think whoever owns the car is nearby, and there's a homeless person, an obvious homeless person walked by. I think they actually set their fucking car alarm off on purpose because the homeless person was walking by. Like, no bullshit. There's people that do that. Very strange. Or the people who lock their vehicle, but they wait till you're like close to it. They lock it with the remote and it makes the loud noise and all of that, and the lights flash, and I just think to myself, well, I wasn't thinking about breaking into cars, but now I kind of am. I mean, I'm not going to act on it, but it's like, yeah, I had no thoughts of breaking into an automobile. Now I'm kind of thinking about it. Like, what is this? Opposite of the intended effect, as they say. I might need to go out for more coffee. But yeah, the early part of my day is set sort of. It's almost like a Groundhog's Day situation. Uh, I'm sort of setting my strategy. Reminding myself. Uh, what exactly it is that I'm waking up into this delusory realm of business. It's business. It's an adversarial. It's a delusory adversarial realm of business. That's what this is, right? So the fact is, whether they're humans, whether it's solipsism, whatever these things are, shout out to Highly Suspect, who, I tried to reject his idea, but, years ago, he told me that he said, you'll never convince me that I'm the same as what these other things are, talking about the NPCs or whatever. And that was, of course, early stages of the fake pandemic and all that. And that's when people's behavior was really out on Front Street. And but also look how quickly almost everybody just went back to life, not as it was before, but just went right back to, you know, uh, as if, as if life could ever be normal, whatever that means, right? As if there was ever a possibility of normality ever again, you know, uh, after that. It got so bad at a certain point during the pandemic, like a person had to be something of a doomer in their speech and the way they behaved, or they couldn't creditably be taken seriously as a human. I mean, it really was that bad. I remember. So at a certain point, it was like I got accused of being a doomer so much, but it finally came full circle to where I was like, listen, at this point, if y'all aren't basically anybody that's not a doomer is just completely out of their fucking minds. You know, the way things had gotten. You know, it was like this is yeah. It's is it bad on one hand? It's bad to be a quote doomer. Not that I'm not and never have been. By the way, it's not my nature, but um, at a certain point, it's just like, hey, look, I mean, you know, the certain level of doomerism is baked into the cake at this point. Like it's just the levels of delusion. Once again, delusional and in denial. The levels of delusion required, you know, at a certain point in the pandemic, uh, to not be a doomer. That was like, hey, it's easier just to be a doomer, right? And less shameful at a certain point. You know, we get into Jack Talcottian levels of delusion at a certain point. Maybe I'm going to have to take a stroll. There's another fellow that takes strolls in the morning, and I stop and have a brief chat with him from time to time. But yesterday I avoided him 2 different times because I was on my live stream. And now it's like, yeah, I could run to the bathroom, but I'm probably going to run right into that dude. I don't know. I'm just too considerate sometimes. I guess all I got to do is be like, yeah, man, I'm on a live stream. See you later. I've been taking in a little more sugar than normal. So all that sugar gets peed out. Sugar, as it turns out, not quite as bad as what we've been led to believe it or not. Shocking. Yes, a delusory, adversarial realm of business. But what I brought up highly suspect in him saying uh, that you'll never convince him that he's the same as what these NPCs are. Then I got into ranting about the pandemic. But what was the main? I was making a point before all of that. Um, oh yes, yes. The point I was attempting to make was whatever these beings may or may not be, some of them in a vacuum wherever they were existing before they came to this place, or maybe they are just code. Maybe they are a part of the matrix and they're part of the computer code. But either way, does it even matter? The function of some of these beings is that there's no other place they'd rather be, right, than a delusory adversarial realm of business. This is where they want to be. They would choose to come to this place 1 million times out of a million, right? Which, back to something I talked about on yesterday's stream, that in no way validates America, corporatism, the money supply, business, Tesla's stock price, right? The stock market, banks, Wall Street. The fact that there are people, if that's what they are, the fact that there are entities or beings, or maybe they're just NPC computer code, I don't know what the fuck they are, but the fact that they seemingly exist and will never not defend this place because they love it, right? That in no way validates the place itself, right? Especially given that I know exactly what I am. And more correctly, it's not even what I am. It's what do I represent from the perspective of this delusory realm of business. I represent the adversary, right? And this is where we get into the backwards or inverted nature of the Bible, religion, Christianity, and all of these things. What does the Bible talk about as the adversary? Satan, right? So, and that sets up a situation where, oh, well, there's this loving, benevolent creator, God, and this heavenly father, sky daddy, and out of love, right? That force intelligently made a place called Earth and created humanity. But then, oh, whoever could have foreseen this? Now appears the dastardly adversary, and that's Satan. See, this is an inversion. Absolutely not. That this is not what this place is. That's not what happened. I'm the adversary from the perspective of this realm. See, it's always situational. It's always in a context. It's always from a perspective. And that's where humanity and that's where people get lost in their thinking, because this is where we get, not we, but for the purposes of the discussion, those who might listen to the discussion, see how I want to be proper with the pronouns. I want to be specific about what I'm referring to. Whoever or whatever would listen to the discourse or consider these points, right? It's always from a perspective, right? So what happens with the common sensing and the word of mouthing of everything is it's this idea that, well, we, meaning humanity, is all in this, meaning this place, this country, whatever state you live in, whatever your city is, whoever the people that go to your church are, whoever the people at your job are, right? That that all makes groups, and that the people in those groups are, quote, in it together, meaning now that creates a context, and then all word of mouthing and common sensing and conventional wisdom, it's always set up from that framework. And this is one of the most subtle points that the realm or antithesis uses. It's this idea that, okay, the enemy or antithesis understands it can always set up these offers. I talked yesterday about how this realm, this delusory, moment to moment experiences, it's this never ending series of the realm making offers. To what? It's the realm, it's antithesis offering the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency. Hey, wouldn't you like to opt into, by default, you will serve corruption. You will serve an adversarial system of business, right? That's what this is. That's what's happening moment to moment, and I didn't make it that way. I'm not the one that created it. In fact, as far as I can tell, the reason why this place is set up the way it is in direct opposition to what I am. Okay. So in fact, from the perspective of this place, I'm the adversary. So, or I represent an essence or, a delusory, individuated aspect of the adversary. But what does the realm tell me? The realm tells me, right, through religion and from day one, having designed and installed this psychology, after my parents, again, knowingly or unknowingly sacrificed me to Moloch, a pagan god, right? And that's happens to effectively all of the children in America, right? That's the common experience, um, especially in America. Well, what does it do? It says, well, antithesis says, well, I have the advantage in that I get to influence and program this child's mind. So I'm going to tell it that this place was set up to love it and nurture it and tend to it and care for it, and everything was perfect and wonderful, except one day an adversary appeared. Now, wouldn't it make total sense that a deceptive enemy why wouldn't it teach me that? It's teaching me exactly backwards, right? Because otherwise, I might discover very early on in the game, right? Or the delusion, right? I might discover early on, oh, wait a minute, this realm is adversarial to my own nature, right? So the realm says, well, wait a minute, just like these ideas that are associated with Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, at some point the realm itself recognized, oh, wait a minute, there's these powerful ideas, and someone could figure this out. One of these silly humans could figure this out and gain some potentially gain power, right, in the realm. Uh, so the system itself put the ideas out, the ideas attributed to Ted Kaczynski, and then you know attached it to a criminal psychopath. So much so that the ideas really aren't even able to be discussed whatsoever, right? Because or even if people are willing to discuss the ideas, a bunch of time has to be wasted where there's the rubbing of hands and the gnashing of teeth, where everybody has to bemoan the horrific nature of the attacks. I don't give a flying fuck about the supposed horrific nature of the attacks. Don't care. It's not my concern. Bad shit happens all the time, everywhere, according to the news media. Right? I'm in motherfucking Los Angeles right now. If the media is to be believed, all sorts of crazy, heinous shenanigans are going on right as I speak in this very city. So why do I need to waste a bunch of time and energy and effort? Again, the rubbing of hands and gnashing of teeth over. We gotta go through this big. We got to put on this big display of being saddened and oh my God, can you believe the humanity of someone you know uh, making explosive devices? Like, yeah, I don't know, man. When you just read the history of Western civilization, I mean, explosive devices is a fairly common theme as far as I can tell. I don't like, is this, so it's already bizarre, right? It's already bizarre. So the ideas themselves become taboo, right? So same thing with this. The psychology from day one says, okay, well, there's a space in the psyche where the individual might come to understand at an early age, well, wait a minute, this whole system of business, it's adversarial to what it is to even conduct oneself as a human being based on notions of love, compassion, empathy, looking out for your fellow man and woman, right? Because this place is set up to preclude all of that from happening, right? Not to facilitate it. So part of the psychology is to actually believe, well, wait a minute, Earth Earth trademark, right? Whatever that is, the Earth as a brand was originally designed and set up and created to foster and support humanity, and that was all wonderful. But then one day, the dastardly adversary appeared. That's backwards. That's not what happened. That's the opposite of what happened. What happened is this place was created as a literal delusion by the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit. And the realm itself came into existence in opposition to what I am, but not what I am based on my characteristics, what I am at my core essence, right? What I truly am, not my psychology, not my biography, you know, not my history, not all of these things, not my physical appearance, not the way my voice sounds, those are all characteristics. Anyway, we got to go on a brief break, but we shall return. All right, we're kind of back. People are just, I mean, just, I'm trying not to be insulting. And what I've realized is just that negativity, when I do get into, describing people as idiots, right? I am in touch with my own physicality enough. I realize that there's an impact to me, right? For just being ugly or rude. And not, I don't mean calling them, that to their face. I just mean generally, whatever that energetic form is. But just people are appallingly, and this gets back to the idea of dysfunction. You know, even if I was willing to, which I'm not, but even if I was willing to sign off on some notion that, you know, society, the members of society had some true desire to have a healthy society that would serve humanity, right? Instead of serving humanity up to, rich folks and corporate interests and all of this, to actually facilitate, the creativity and all of the wonderful things that humanity would otherwise have to offer, purportedly. Even if I was willing to sign off on that, I can't sign off on these people's ability to actually competently act that out in the real world, because I observe them and I watch how they behave. And when the only conclusion I can come to is the vast majority of all of these people, they simply lack whatever would be required to be able to pull it off. Meaning, even if there were organizations, even if there was a structure, even if there was like, hey, we're going to have you go do this job and this is going to be your function. And we're making a proper society. Most of these people don't have the capacity. They simply would not have the ability to follow through with whatever tasks were given. I mean, that's what I see now, you know, so I'm training myself out of, thinking about that as fucking stupid, but I mean, that's what it is, right? And, you know, I'm getting to the bottom of, why does stupidity bother me so much? And probably why it bothers me so much is probably tied to the reason why so many people, even if they're not intelligent overall, most folks will still play dumb when it's to their advantage, right? And again, how can we have a proper society? And I don't mean we, but how can there be a proper society, but where a lot of the behaviors are going to be motivated by subterfuge and deception, whereby people know, individuals understand, well, I have 100% of these gifts and energies to give, and I'm only going to show that I'm capable of 50% of that, so such that the 50% becomes the 100%. Does that make sense? Meaning, when they do actually put out 50% of what should be their actual capacity, it seems like they're really digging deep and maximizing their gifts, when in reality, that's could not be further from the truth, right? So just based on that one notion alone, I don't think it's even possible right? And again, I'm not even talking in the context of the adversarial nature of the realm and the delusion. I'm talking about like in a vacuum, if I'm willing to play along with some of these notions, around what society, some of the so-called truthers would say that society, especially the more, the folks who seem to be more into the Trump memes and stuff, even if I try to work with that bullshit, right? I still can't even get there. It's like, okay, you're telling me that I'm observing people and it's an open secret, so much so that videos come into my feed about this at times, but it's more or less an open secret that people say it's sandbagging. That's what it's called. It's called sandbagging. People, a sizable portion of the populace will always sandbag no matter what, so that they can, for whatever their reasons are, right? It doesn't even matter. The validity of the reasons is neither here nor there. It's the fact that those individuals are proving by their own actions that they at no point are willing to entertain the notion that a proper functioning society is something that's number one possible, and number two is something that they themselves would even be willing to participate in, right? Because you want to talk about nihilism. Well, what is it when somebody uh, agrees that, yeah, this is what needs to happen to make a proper society? All hands on deck. We need everybody maximizing their productivity. We need everybody using their talents. And those individuals themselves from day one always operate with a spirit of, but I'm going to hold back my talents. I'm going to hold back my gifts. I'm going to hold back my energies, and I'm going to hold back my efforts through sandbagging. See, the thing already disproves itself, or more correctly, there's no way to eliminate the dysfunction. Solely based on human psychology, my assertion is it's impossible. Impossible. It can never happen in this delusory adversarial realm of business. It is not possible to have societies and systems that function in a way that will benefit and meet the needs of humans on a human level. Now, when you get into their desires, what they like to do with their free time, what will they spend if they have money to blow, what will they buy, consumption, capitalistic society, forget about all of that, right? I'm merely talking about the basics of just day-to-day life. That is never has been functional. Number one, it's never been functional. See, that's a key point. And again, back to this idea of what I talked about earlier with the nature of the realm, and the idea that, well, everything was wonderful and peachy keen, but then, one day the dastardly adversary appeared, and that's Satan. And I'm like, well, actually, that's backwards. The realm itself views me as the adversary, or more correctly, what what my essence represents. That's the adversary. I'm the adversary, and this realm makes a lot more sense in that context. So much the same, the realm itself, based on antithesis, gets first shot at the child's mind. So it's very easy to set up the idea from day one that, well, yeah, of course society used to be wonderful and perfect and everything functioned, but then over time it's degraded and degenerated, but it's still pretty good overall, right? I mean, that was kind of the common notion for most of my life. And then lately it's been kind of off the rails, but it's always in the back of our mind. And then with the Hope Station, the way the Hope Station functions, it's like, yeah, but the ship will right itself, or the people will rise up, or some versions or some combinations of that. No, it's never happened. It never will happen. Society has never, for one moment in the entirety of American history, has never functioned in a way that it served humanity as its major purpose and function. The so-called common good. That has never happened, and that cannot possibly happen. And I've just explained why. And the sandbagging alone will preclude it from happening. The fact that people will recognize, oh, I have only so much to give. And the more I show that I have to give, the more is expected of me. So the strategy from day one is I need to hold back some of my energies, my gifts, and my talents. But then now we have neurodivergence. What about people like Benton? I'm not really capable of that. Benton can't really do that. Okay. That's not really a thing I'm able to do, not in the long run. Right. Um, and in fact, I tend to lead with uh, my talents and abilities in many ways. Right. Or, in some ways, I want people to know as quickly as possible. Right. That I'm a little different than the average bear, you know. And that's innate to me. Right. And I would say that's probably, again, the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit. Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack can't ever understand why it might be to his advantage to not let his little light of shine. Right, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Well, that's the idea. Is well, I the light of mine. That's my gift to the world. So, of course, while I'm here, I'm going to share that gift. Well, no, the conventional wisdom, right? The status quo, the modus operandi is no. Wait a minute, we better hold back some of this for ourselves. And what is that? That's greed. See, that's greed. Now, why do all of these ideas exist? See, why does all of this exist? Well, probably because, again, antithesis would understand psychologically, uh, man and his symbols, Carl Jung, that he would understand, well, on some level, these bozos do know that they have been born into a delusion, at least symbolically, even if their conscious minds can't figure it out, or even if explained to them, you know. And we could find volunteers and do a 6-month course, and I could design a curriculum, and we could have an entire course, and I could teach all of this. And most people would you can't, it's just never going to be possible for them to fully grasp what I'm on about here. It's just not going to happen, right? It's just not a thing. And so what I've also realized is when it comes to things like how do I feed myself, how do I clothe myself, where do I sleep at night, especially going forward, uh, you know, I can't even discuss that with people. There can't ever be a meeting of the minds, because all I'm ever going to get from them is a bunch of word of mouth, common sensing, conventional wisdom based on the notion that was sent here to serve business, right? And to make myself into a business, and that all roads, but basically all fulfillment in this life, it can only ever come through engagement in business, right? Meaning what I do for a living, how I earn my money, what kind of place can I afford to live in or not afford to live in, right? As it may be. So there's effectively zero people who have the understanding of these matters that I have. It's effectively zero. For Americans, I'm going to say I'm probably it, honestly. Out of all Americans, right? We do have a Canadian who seems to, and in fact, is probably farther down the road than I am, actually, King Stephen. Probably I'm attempting to catch up to King Stephen in some of these understandings. Uh, but so with some notable exceptions, I'm effectively it. So back to me waking up in the morning and sort of setting my mind and my own mental strategies. I'm, realistically speaking, I must make peace with the fact that, at some point in the future, people are going to be confused. It's like, well, why is this guy even homeless? Like, what's going on here? You know, but yeah, I can't, there's never a common understanding. There's never going to be that foundational level of, it's like, okay, yeah, I can explain the whole thing to you, but are they gonna, I'm gonna need to put them through a 6-month course and they're probably still not gonna get it. Right. And then it's just, how many, uh, and then it becomes like a salesperson, right? What does a salesperson do? They overcome objections. So then it's me speaking truth about the nature of the realm to a person who's now serving business, of course, like a good servant of business. They're going to just go into salesperson mode and they're going to attempt to overcome all of my objections, which aren't even objections. I'm not objecting. I'm saying, well, this is how things are, right? AKA truth. You can't handle the truth. And then at a certain point, you know, the actual truth is so dismaying. And this is where I tried to bring up this story where I talked to this some guy in the coffee shop at a Starbucks in Silicon Valley, and he brought up the Dave Ramsey had apparently made it okay for people to talk about what's been going on with the Social Security Administration. Although I wasn't aware of that. It wasn't until later that I realized, oh, Dave Ramsey talked about this, and that must be why because that guy brought up Social Security Administration. And I did what I always do, which is I just hit them as soon as somebody starts bringing up, the government and this and that. I just immediately hit them with the 1.15 trillion in interest on the national debt, because that's like a liver shot, right? It just there's really no recovery from that because you can't even really have a discussion about anything because I'm gonna force them to reconcile that, and it's not reconcilable. And I like showing off my knowledge to some extent. Then I get to just sort of, just show off what I know about the financial system, which even that is sort of losing its luster. The idea of showing off is losing its luster. I'm less and less satisfied by that. That's something else that's not fake. It's vacuous. It's empty. It's hollow, right? So when you see all these videos, oh, everything's fake, politics is fake, this is fake. No, what they mean is vacuous. It lacks substance. Well, guess what? So does everything. Everything that is not specifically one with the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit, everything that's not specifically that is in fact of no substance, or air quotes fake, but I believe vacuous would be a more proper term. But since Americans don't really know words, and from what I've seen, are not willing to break out the old dictionary. And how much of my current understanding and these ideas that I talk about on this channel, how much of that has directly came from me stubbornly pulling out my phone, going to my dictionary app, and just reading the meanings of words, right? And I know most folks are not going to fucking do that, and it's completely fine that they're not going to do that. Again, I am that one, right? And I've earned this level of understanding. Now, I've talked about that wisdom is bestowed, it can't be attained and all of this. And that's true, right? That's sort of the serendipitous aspects of it. However, a lot of this is just my own fucking stubbornness and my own, again, desire. I'm not martyring myself. When I talked about that, there's some people who, their strongest desire would be to come to an adversarial realm of a delusory adversarial realm of business, that they would choose it 100 times out of 100, right? It's like, yeah, I'm going to choose book learning. I'm going to choose intellectual concepts. I'm going to choose a lot of this anyway. So it's like, yeah, I'm not a victim. I'm not going to martyr myself. But my thing is, I recognized early on, well, oh, other folks aren't into this. Other folks, they're not down for the book learning. They're not down for actual study, right? It's fine. It's just, yeah, for whatever reason, I've been a lifelong person who's always been attracted to, studying and researching. So what? Big deal. Other people are into other things. That we're seeing in the present, it's quite helpful, right? Especially in a so-called information age, especially, and I never thought people would I never thought the average person would get to the level of reading that they do now, just reading their devices. The average person does way more reading than they ever did. I'm certain of that, just based on these devices. All right, now I'm trying to figure out where do I want to go get coffee. There's always Starbucks, but I don't know if I want to deal with that or not. Hmm. All right, I think I'm going to take the show on the road. Bear with me just a moment. Let me check the battery levels. Yeah, see, today the battery is not taking a nosedive on my main phone. It's more on the frugal side for whatever reason. See, this shit ain't normal, man. It's really not. Uh, I get out of my car and there's a woman in traffic and she's just, I'm not making this up, folks. She was gazing longingly at me. Now, again, it's not Benton. It's that I just happen to probably physically resemble whatever she's looking for, right? And I happen to be in her field of vision. But the disconnect is I don't think she understood that this is a real life situation and that the thing she's observing is observing her gazing longingly at it. And now I'm looking at her like, this is fucking weird. And that's the disconnect. And I really do think the devices has had a lot to do with people becoming that way. People have just gotten so accustomed to watching stuff, but not. I think that what they've lost is the observer effect, meaning people seem to have lost the part where they, in the past, I think people were a little more aware while they were observing that the thing that they're observing may be aware that they are observing, right? So when I looked at her, it was like a one Mississippi, two Mississippi, three Mississippi, where that's a long ass time when one is being stared at or gazed at. She was longingly gazing at me. No bullshit. And then there was a one Mississippi, two Mississippi, three Mississippi where she's just doing it, but seemingly unaware that I'm now aware of what's happening and I'm starting to have a facial expression like this is fucking weird. Like what's going on here? And see, and we can say, oh yeah, what is normal and what is this and what is that? Well, the sad part reality is that probably is now normal. So when I say that's not normal, really what I mean is, you know, I was never, I was raised in a very specific environment in which stuff like that, generally speaking, did not happen, right? And if it did happen, it was such an outlier and so strange, you know. But now it's just more or less normal, right? And then we get into topics around uh, social isolation. Maybe people don't have romantic partners to the extent that they used to. All of these things, right? But it's just so weird, man. I'll never get used to it. It's just never going to be a thing. I can't be the only one that notices stuff like that. So bear with me while we navigate on foot. We're about to pass the homeless where they set up the homeless shower trailer and bathe the homeless. So that'll be you never know what crazy person might get triggered by my discourse when we're walking by, or just exactly what might be going on. I used to go out into the road. They would close off the lane, and I would kind of go out into the lane where they close the lane off. But they don't seem to just kind of go around the whole thing. But it doesn't seem to be quite as possible anymore for whatever reason. It's a lot of work, though, setting this thing up. I guess they do it 4 days a week. I think it's Tuesday through Friday, I believe. And if you ever hear this, like Los Angeles County, I believe, they have like a $9 billion budget or whatever, and they talked about how it's $7,000 per month per homeless person, for all these homeless services and all this. So I guess this is part of that. And as we know, money does not solve problems in the first place, unless the actual problem is specifically a lack of money. Thank you for your patience. The Starbucks was a little closer, but man, 7-Eleven has these coffee machines. Now they're hit or miss, but it's where it grinds the beans every time, for a fresh cup or whatever. But they seem to be pretty good overall. Oh wait, there's another Starbucks though. I forgot. I just usually don't go to this one. Oh well. Indecisive. Indecisive. Guess it's time to get off of the caffeine addiction pretty soon. But not yet. And back to some of what we were talking about earlier. More and more, like I'm just unwilling to even entertain these notions around the idea of a proper society, right? Like number one, pretending like that even exists in the first place, or that maybe it did exist in the past, and oh well, we air quotes we've lost our way, but we'll get back there. Like no, I'm done with all that. It's all a non-starter. I need evidence, right? I need people to show me the proof, right? So I'm here to tell you, this thing has never functioned in a way that served the people that exist within it, and it's not capable of it. It cannot happen because why? Because if the Nancy Pelosi MS-13 spark of divinity is a thing, and this is a delusory adversarial realm of business, and what I am is the adversary, then that makes it impossible for society to ever operate in a way that would meet or serve my needs. It's not possible. So, people could say, oh, well, that's a cope or that's a this or that's a that. I mean, you can call it whatever you want to call it. You know, uh, the only thing I'm concerned about is that what's happening or not? I'm not concerned about where people say, oh, well, that sounds like a cope or that sounds like a this or that sounds like a that. But who cares what it sounds like? Is it true? Yes or no? Like, well, why am I concerned about how it sounds? Right. Because the moment we get into, well, that sounds like a this, pretty soon it's, oh, well, Benton's behavior is the problem. See how quickly we get to that. Oh, well, now let's just gaslight Benton and we'll point a finger at Benton and we'll see if he will accept our offer on behalf of the realm to internalize these spiritual attacks. Right. See, I already know all of that ahead of time. It's not a problem. And the last time I tried to listen to Chalk Body Outline, it's, nothing against him as an individual. It's just so strongly identified with the validity of the realm. Right. I mean, is it really that hard to believe that I'm apparently here in 2025 in a realm that uh, has no validity from the perspective of meeting my needs, right? And in fact, to even say it that way, to even say, what about me? What about my needs? My needs aren't being met. Just to even think or speak that way as an American, especially, uh, a male-bodied American, right? Whatever we're calling it. That immediately triggers the pull yourself up by your bootstraps type thinking, right? Oh, well, you're bad. You're wrong, Benton. If Benton, you're the problem. If you would do things different, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. What if I was never born? Are you telling me that everything will be perfect and it will be a utopia? Because I'm pretty sure I can't possibly be the problem. Because I'm pretty sure all the social problems that exist today were already fully fomented by about 1960. And then I came along 15 years after that. And that's just according to the official fucking fiction history, by the way. So how can I be the problem? Does this make logical sense? No, but it makes logical sense when I realize, oh, it's yet another offer. The realm saying, would you like to opt into cursing your blessing? See, I am the blessing, or more correctly, what I am is the blessing. Okay. So the specific, and I realized this in reviewing the stream yesterday, I failed to make these points. The offer in each new moment, it's actually, would you like to accept this opportunity to treat your blessing as if it's a curse? And that's what this is, to wake up every day and to go out here to the best of my ability to make rich people richer and to serve a delusory adversarial realm of business. That is to accept an offer whereby my own actions and behaviors are treating my own blessing, right? My own endowment, my own birthright, as if it were a curse. That's what blasphemy in the Holy Spirit is. And see, I can't even Google. If I try to Google something about religion now or philosophy, I start to read the explanation. I'm like, well, that's just fucking wrong, right? That's how advanced I've gotten in my thinking and my philosophies. And I start to read it. I'm like, that's just fucking wrong. That's just flat wrong. It's just incorrect. you know. But in the past, that would have been my research. Oh, let's just Google a bunch of stuff and then, well, this must be true, right? It's insane. Anyway, give me a second. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Thank you for your patience. But yeah, that's, I read this stuff nowadays and it's just laughable to me, the ignorance, right? And these are people who, a lot of them went to Bible college or they studied all of this stuff, theology, a bunch of idiots for real, like just don't even understand the material, right? And that's what boggled my mind for so long about, especially the Bible, was just, I had already developed, and I'm not even talking about having it shoved down my throat as a kid. I just mean like once I did become more interested in spiritual type of topics, I already had a firm background in reading and researching and all of these things. And so then when I began to apply that to the Bible and religion, I realized, oh, well, wait a minute. Like, there's a lot of this material I'm clearly not grasping, but then I'm seeing other people who are treating the same material as if it's just some version of it's just super fucking obvious. I'm like, well, I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure I'm way more book smart than most of these bozos. Uh, all I can do is scratch my head, you know. But they're just completely certain. And really, what it is, religion, especially Christianity, especially in America, it's just it's like a, ideas are passed down, generationally. It's just, people are taught this and people are taught that. And I don't catch any of these content creators, but I've been hearing this name Andrew Wilson quite a bit. I still don't even know who that, like, I don't know what that is or who that is, other than apparently he's has something to do with religion. He's some kind of streamer or influencer. And I'm not trying to play it cool. I mean, that's what I know about it. If I knew who he was or if I watched him, I'd tell you. This coffee's cold somehow. That's strange. I don't know how that happened. Came out of a coffee machine too. Fresh brewed coffee, but the coffee's not hot. That's weird. I don't know how that would have happened. Yeah, people, I'm just standing here with a walk sign because none of you will stop to let me cross the street. So I don't know why y'all are doing that, but you are. I don't have any fucking idea. But they don't care because everybody else is coming up to the intersection and making a right turn. So the fact that I'm supposed to be crossing the road, why would they care? See, in a proper functioning society, each one of those people would understand, well, the system functions the best for everybody when certain rules are followed. See, but they're proving with their actions they don't care about any of that. That's not their concern. Now, what would be their concern potentially would be the guilt and shame if in a vacuum somebody potentially observed them not yielding to a pedestrian. But when there's a 20-car line of people and none of them are yielding to pedestrians, there's no potential guilt or shame because, oh, well, everybody else was doing it. So I can't ever be guilty because I was just doing the thing everybody else was doing. See? But in a proper functioning society, every single person that drove up to the intersection would understand, oh, this is the time we stop to safely allow the pedestrians to cross. They wouldn't factor in, well, it looks like we can get away with it in this particular instance. See, that wouldn't even be a factor. But as we know, it's every man for himself or herself, which could be okay, except for pretending like it's not that way. It's the now everybody has to pretend like, well, actually, we're all out here wanting to do the right thing. Actually, we're all out here taking care of each other. It's like, well, I don't know. I just watched a line of 20 people make a right turn while I stood at a corner, and I was supposed to be able to cross the road, right? And there was, but I already know they don't give a flying fuck about me, right? Now I know I can just, if I want to, I can just walk out there and make them stop, but that's not the point, really. It's really not the point of what we're discussing here. Man, something went wrong with this coffee. I might have to go back. This might not be drinkable. Shit. Yeah, we're going back. If it was just a temperature, I think we could deal with it, but something went wrong. Anyway, we're going back. Anyway, bear with me just a moment. Of course, now it's going to be time for another bathroom break after all this. Good. That's what I mean about this level of healing and my digestion. At this point, I would declare it's as close to normal as it's probably ever going to be. Some of this is all that sugar. 3 days in a row, I had a bunch of sugar. Uh, it's all coming out in the pee pee. That's how that works. When the kidneys function properly, anyway. All right, be right back. All right, I think we're back. Shout out to chat. And then, also watching people, because in that 7-Eleven, the choice of hot drinks, not even hot drinks, the choice of coffee drinks and, all of these lattes and this drink and that drink. And, you know, now they have all these machines and dispensers. So there's like this gigantic spread out area. And whatever I'm doing, a lot of times it's unconventional, whatever I might be up to. But then two different times I went in there, it's like wherever I go to, that's where the other people come to. This is not arbitrary. It's not just, oh, well, they just happen to be getting the same thing you're getting. It's like, no, they don't know who they are. They don't know why they're there. And they're just, other than some basic notion of they're going to get something. Oh, look, there's a person getting something. I'll go to where they are and get what they're getting. Like, for real, this is how most people operate most of the time. Because I said, fuck it, I'm not dealing with the machine again. So I went to the pre-made urns. So before, when I was in there using the machines, almost immediately here come two fellas and just make a beeline right into the space where I am, right? Which is fine. But then I go back and now I'm going to the urns. Same exact thing happens. Here's two people just immediately show up to try to get something where I'm getting something. See, this is never a coincidence. This is never an accident, right? It's specifically because I'm there getting something, right? Now, what I find helpful is to realize these people are equally lost every moment of every day. They're just that lost. And that's how they go through their day. Is at that level of unconscious, just wandering around. And then those are all the people who word of mouth everything and common sense everything and conventional wisdom everything. Oh, well, you just got to go out here and serve a delusory adversarial realm of business because, what else are you going to do? That's just what it is, and not that they have that level of understanding, but it's just sort of oh, yeah, well, I'm just sort of here adrift in a sea of like a liquid gel, and I'm just sort of slowly kind of just meandering and bobbing and weaving through all of that. And, well, what else are you going to do? I don't know, man. What wouldn't Jesus do? Right? Not what would Jesus do? That's not interesting. What wouldn't Jesus do is fascinating. And I could spend a week, just thinking about that. If Jesus were here in the flesh, not what would he do, what would he not do? And I'm pretty sure, trading his time, efforts, resources, attention, blood, sweat, and tears, trading all of that for Federal Reserve notes to make rich people richer. I'm almost certain that would not be on the agenda. Call me crazy, right? Call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure. So, just imagine Benton here as a homeless person, just flying by the seat of his pants, living in the streets with almost nothing, right? Which probably will be the case in the near future, and it's completely fine. I'll get into the reasons why, in some ways, I kind of prefer it actually, and I'll get into all that also. Give me just a second. Hello, and kind of lost my point, unfortunately. I feel like it's coming back though. Give me a second. Oh yeah, Jesus not serving business. Oh yeah, so these churches, right? And in the past, folks, we probably have no idea the thousands of times I've stood in line and ate a free meal that some church was giving somewhere. It's in the thousands, folks. I was a street level homeless person for a long ass time, lest we forget. And despite the truck driving, I never fully left it at all. Anyway, so in some ways, I'm homeless going back to about 2012. Right. The fact that I got money in my pocket and a car, and you know, if I don't want to sleep in the car, I'm able to go to a hotel or whatever. That's not even really the point. But the level of unconsciousness and just in like a waking stupor that these people are in. But then again, very sophisticated means for, number one, fooling themselves into thinking that they're actually present and aware of what's going on. And then, very sophisticated means for seeming like they're with the program. But when under close observation, and this is, you want to talk about a blessing slash curse. I trained myself many years ago to become very observant of my environment. And when I watch a lot of what people do, there's not really a rational, sensical basis for much of the actions that I see happen. But then again, back to what I was talking about earlier. So the preconceived notion, the idea that's put into the person's head from day one is, well, everything that's happening is normal and expected. And, of course, these people have a reason for behaving the way that they're behaving. Yeah, they do. Uh, it's called existing in relation to a delusory adversarial realm of business. And probably what I'm about to do in the near future is codify most of these ideas. I shouldn't say all, but actually put pen to paper, which I've been doing already to some extent, and not to turn it into a business, not to create a movement, not for any other reason than organizing it all on paper will be helpful to me, right? Can I go in there? Thank you, sir. Give me just a second. Be right back. All right, we're back. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, back to the people watching and the observation. You know, I'm convinced if you just randomly plucked a few people off the street and then attempted to run them through a quite basic series of tasks, you know, I just I don't think most people are able to do stuff like that anymore. I just really don't. But then the presumption is, people have never been so educated. People have never been so, capable. People have never been, this is some sort of peak of civilization, right? It's fucking nonsense. It's just nonsense. But again, that's the conventional, and that's the that's where the logic comes in, and the ability to defeat these people's arguments is just to force them to defend things that are indefensible. And so that's what happens with the validity of the realm, right? That's where we get to with the validity of the realm is pretty quickly I can force the other side, and I hesitate to even use the word debate, but in such a discussion or a back and forth, you know, I can pretty quickly force the other side into defending the validity of American society based on what it purports itself to be, right? Which is it's not, right? It's not those things. Just like the guy in the live chat that one time who I insisted I refused to move on in the stream until he made his case for evil not existing. And I'm basically like, well, your entire fucking spiritual attack against me is based on the idea that I'm referring to evil and demonic forces and all of these things, and I'm being ridiculed and made sport of based on all of this. So we're gonna need that person to explain why evil doesn't exist. And what do they try to do? See, these people always show you who they are. They tried to not say anything. They tried to bring up other issues. They tried to continue to argue their case beyond that point, right? They tried to double down on whatever they've already asserted. It's only after I stubbornly refused to do anything. I said, we're not moving on until you type your little case into the chat for why evil doesn't exist. Then eventually it's like, oh, okay, because they want to keep trying to troll me. So eventually it's like, oh, no, I agree that evil exists. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting because this entire assertion of yours and attempt to get me to internalize a spiritual attack is you understand the whole thing's based on the possibility of evil in fact not existing at all, right? And then now, are they really that dumb? Or now we get into stupid or liar territory. Are they really that dumb? See, now maybe they are. I don't know. Are they really that unintelligent? Possibly. And even then want to give me just enough, right? Want to give me just enough agreement to try to lure me back into, spiritual attacks, right? Which is what? What is a spiritual attack? This is what, and shout out to Brother Austin. Brother Austin did not know that he was teaching me this, but Brother Austin directly taught me this, even though I'm sure it wasn't his intention, right? But a spiritual attack is an offer that I would choose to treat what I am, which represents blessing, right? Antithesis has no choice but to represent curse. And so the spiritual attack, hang on, we're having to wait for traffic so I can get in my car. And it's the inversion of treating blessing as if it were a curse, right? Now, have I done that for much of my life? Yeah, unfortunately. I don't know that I knew that that's what I was doing, but it's the offer. See, the system, the realm, the delusion always offers, hey, would you like to accept this opportunity to treat blessing as if it were a curse, right? And this was the whole thing with Brother Austin and the Lord's Prayer, right? And my famous crash out, which really wasn't even a crash out. It was more of an internal crash out. But what's fascinating to me, and he can't claim any credit for this, but is that it definitely led to at least part of the recent breakthrough of the true knowledge of self, which does represent a breakthrough. That's a breakthrough in the the discourse and the understanding and the ideas themselves. It's a technology, as I've referred to it. The proper identification, in fact, functions as a technology. But hang on, I got to roll the windows down. Stale ass air in her. There's one of our local homeless people. He's on one. He's got his check, so he's flying high off of whatever substances he's doing. Mm. And that was when I was really getting into the Psalm 23 stuff. My cup runneth over and all of that. Made to lie down by, the whole thing, Psalm 23. And so at a certain point, I got spiritually attacked with the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread and all of this. And, at first I tried to, out of spirit of forgiveness and attempting to take ownership of whatever my part would have been in, I had some hard feelings based on some of that, but I could tell I was going through something also. It's like something's, there was some turmoil, there was some upheaval, something was going on with me internally. So I waited, I bided my time and then sort of fell on my sword prematurely a little bit. I think in an email, if memory serves, the so-called back channels, as they say. But then, as often happens with me, I realized after that day and a half where I did internalize the spiritual attack to some extent, and that does represent a curse of that's me cursing my own blessing, right? Because what a blessing that I've been spiritually guided and protected, but guess what I am is spiritual guidance. What I am is spiritual protection, so I guess it's not that astonishing after all, right? But at the time, it's this idea of, well, yeah, you can crow about this Psalm 23, but what about this puny little Lord's Prayer? And I could just see antithesis going, what about this? You singing for your supper, some version of, begging the master for your meal, right? Which I don't even think that's what that is, and so I could tell what really bothered me at the time was it's a tactic or a strategy that to a person who's not a strategic thinker, it probably is not a tactic that is easily detectable, but to me it's very detectable, which is, oh, this is a person who's trying to make me swallow the entire Bible and be made to answer for every fucking letter of the Holy Bible, the King James Version of the Holy Bible in the English language, right? Which, number one, I've never agreed to do. Number two, I never will. Number three, I'm on record that much of the Bible is hot garbage nonsense, right? So this is a person who's heard me say that, who's heard me say versions of that, who every single time he's able to will strategically try to put me into a position where I must defend the book in its entirety or just never refer to it at all. It's like, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I'll refer to any portion of it anytime I want to, and I will not accept some notion of now I must defend every single letter, with the fullness of my own humanity. Like, that's insane. right? But people, I've watched people allow themselves to be maneuvered into those positions. It's common. It's commonplace, right? And at a certain point, it really does turn into some version of the movie Tombstone. You know, I think that was Billy Bob. Uh, you know, the townie who talked about it's like playing cards with my brother's kids. You know, at a certain point, it does turn into that. From my perspective, it's like what is this? I don't even need this. You know, like yeah, maybe earlier on in my development, maybe it was a little more fun to sort of show off my abilities to, you know, argue and do this and do that. But at this point, it's just laughable dealing with some of these folks. Uh, you know, it's, what's in it for me? It just, and then they seem to stay the same, and I'm always seemingly growing and evolving and changing. Well, surprise, surprise, you know, what I am is incapable of stagnation. What I am can never know what it is to not be in motion, to not be flowing, to not be creating. See? And again, that's a lack. It doesn't understand a lack. So part of this, you know, and it's going to sound like a cope, and that's fine. Again, on some level, viewed from a certain perspective, right? All of, what about this life isn't a cope, you know? Uh, but you know, in some ways, it really is true. What I am isn't capable of worrying about how it's going to feed itself in the future. Now, the human being, right? The psyche, the collection of experiences, the history, whatever this is, you know, the person speaking, Benton, this persona, well, it has preferences. See, so that's where some of the consternation, you know, the trepidation around, you know, potentially not having regular income in the future. Although again, I'm used to it's nothing new to me living without income. But then I think, you know, I've been through it with the health stuff so strongly that, you know, I'm really clinging to this idea of being able to earn enough money to, you know, sort of lavishly continue to feed myself, you know, um, with certain very nutritious foods, right? And that realistically, I have no worry about where my meal's coming from. You know, it's not that I know that I'm going to be fed. It's that we get into what type of food is it going to be? And then, okay, what's my body going to have to try to go through to digest some of this food, you know? And, you know, I'm smart enough to say, okay, well, maybe I just won't eat as much. So if I go to some, you know, some free meal somewhere, some organization's giving, you know, the food that I suspect might have the bad oils in it, I'll just have to discipline myself and eat less of it, right? Or maybe, you know, even give my body more time to digest the food, you know. But see, these are all preferences. Again, it's not, you know, but then the mind jumps to ideas around, you know, an empty belly, and you know, not eating for extended periods of time. Which number one, that's fasting, right? That's supposed to be good. Number one. Number two, you know, the sad fact is, other than the fact that other than it sounds gross, if one can remove themselves from the part where it just doesn't sound appealing, if we only look at it from a lens of, is this person going to starve to death because they can't put enough calories in their body? Is that possible? The fact is, there's enough calories in the garbage at any given time. That's just a fact of life in America. So, yeah, I understand it sounds gross, but food, American society is so affluent. Food is pretty much the easiest thing there is to get. So it's not the going hungry. It's really realizing, oh, I'm sort of spoiled myself, and I had a good reason for spoiling myself. It's my own health, right? And but also realizing, well, probably, now we get into destiny or fate or whatever you want to call it. Probably the reason for this level of healing is that I probably do need to be able to assimilate some foods that are not ideal, right? And I'm probably to that point, you know. But now we get into the, well, I don't want to. Well, yeah, that's fine that you don't want to, sir. But again, what wouldn't Jesus do? Well, Jesus wouldn't go work a job because he knows he's going to get fed either way. But the only way Jesus can have his preferred foods is if he goes out here and makes rich people richer. So, you see what I'm talking about? Is it making sense now? And at the end of the day, I know I'll always put my big boy pants on and just do whatever I got to do. Well, not whatever I have to do, but just, within reason, I'll make it happen. And, and another preference is, I got accustomed to plenty of high quality sleep, right? And well, living in the streets with almost nothing, uh, that's less obtainable, right? It's more likely for something to happen to you know interrupt the quality sleep, right? Again, I'll put my big boy pants on and deal with it. It's not a problem. Um, to me, the problem would be if I was still wasting all of this time, energy, and effort uh, going around based on the old understanding where I was way too identified with the validity of this delusory adversarial realm of business. And so the gift, right? The gift is and what is the gift? Where is the gift? Oh, I'm the gift. The gift is inside of me, or more correctly, what I am at my core essence happens to be one with the greatest force possible, right? The alpha and the omega. Within it is contained everything that could possibly ever exist, right? That's what I am. And that's a bell that can never be unrung, right? And a person can't convince themselves of it. They can't fake it till they make it. A person either has that understanding or they don't. And up until about 2 months ago, I had, read about those sort of ideas and, maybe even tried my own versions of fake it till you make it in some ways. And until that bell is rung, there's just no version of faking it. And that's why it has value. That's why when we talk about everything's fake, and I say, well, actually, what people mean by that is vacuous. It's the meaning of the word vacuous, lacking substance, right? Well, what I am is all substance. All substance is contained within what I am. And then now here I am, right? Existing day to day, moment to moment, over again, the delusion of time and space, within a delusory adversarial realm of business. That's what this is. Act accordingly, right? And that's not advice to you. I'm going to act accordingly, right? Now that performance is not going to look proper to the people that I interact with. It's not going to look proper to the people who see me day to day. But to whatever is watching spiritually, see, to whatever actually matters that might view the performance or review the performance. That's who that's who or what I'm performing for, which is actually for myself, or more correctly, for what I am at my core essence, which is what? It's the only way to defeat antithesis is to show before everything that, well, actually, what I am is the genuine article. And look, we sent into a delusion, right? Via delusion, the idea that it's possible to break off a little piece of an indivisible force and then send it to a place called Earth in a delusion of time and space, right? And then watch how it behaves, and will it curse its own blessing, right? Will it internalize these spiritual attacks? Will it behave as if it believes itself to be something it never can be, a lowly, wretched sinner, right? But what is it? The average Christian can't trips all over themselves trying to say, "Oh, I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner." What? That never made sense to me. Why would somebody identify as a sinner, right? And see, again, I just come at them with logic. I say, well, I've cleaned a toilet, but that did not cause my identity to become the identity of a janitor. See, so a person can commit something that a religion could classify as a sin. At no point does that transform the person who committed the action into their identity does not become that of a sinner, any more so than if I go and take a cleaning cloth and chemicals. Hang on, we're getting checked out like super fucking strong, and I gotta just stare this bitch down. I'm getting a lot of side eye though. She's pretending to be looking at the park, but she's side eyeing me the whole time. The only way to defeat these is you just got to stare them down. It's the only thing that works. I don't know what happened to women exactly, but somewhere along the way they got into this aggression and domination type shit. It's like, I don't know, man. Don't Good luck winning a staring contest with old Benton here. Good luck with that. But I got the laser just locked onto me as soon as she saw me. Just fucking laser beam, just tractor beam locked onto me. You know. I'm telling you, people didn't used to be like this. I think in the old days it might have been, oh look, there's a decent looking fellow, and then just on about their day, right? And then something else I've noticed about people will watch anything, doesn't matter what it is, because a few days in a row now, I'll go over to a bench in the park and I'll open a couple of cans of apricots and have to pour the juice out into the trash, and it's a whole process, bro. If people are walking, that people will watch that like it's a TV show. And I don't mean the part where they notice, oh, look, there's a fellow opening some cans. He's about to eat some apricots. See, that historically, that's the normal part. I mean, continuing to give attention to it as if it's something that's being performed for their own enjoyment. It's like, no, I'm a person in a public park about to eat some apricots. I'm not here delivering a performance for the passerby, right? It's gotten really fucking strange out here. And I can't be the only one that notices this. And just by doing something, just by going into public, just go into public and do anything. And then just observe who watches. It's like, and I don't mean like looks at it and notices it. I mean watches it. right? Because I look at things and notice them and then move on. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where the person will, whatever they were previously doing no longer exists, and now they're just watching the performance. It's fucking weird. And at a certain point, I realized, oh, they just, because, the old Benton was like, oh, well, it's just, that's where, again, the targeted individual stuff falls flat. It's like, no, they will watch anything. They will fucking, they will, they'll fuck with any weirdo. Like, it's not, I'm a particular, interesting flavor of weirdo. No, it's not that. These motherfuckers will watch anything. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be a homeless guy taking a shit on the sidewalk. They'll watch it. It's crazy. Well, and I glanced at the chat real quick, and somebody said, "I heard food makes you shit." That's an interesting thing about all these digestive problems I've had and these very serious chronic illnesses that I've had. Assuming that they're now mostly resolved. I mean, we're talking like you know closer to 4 years. I mean, well into 3 full years. I mean, I passed 3 full years of chronic illness, probably closer to four. I'm not good with time, but um, chronic illness, and it took me a long damn time just to be able to go to the restroom normally, right? And and I think it's a taboo topic, and I think most people recognize that your average person does not have what would be considered historically normal bathroom habits or bowel movements, right? Now, again, it's normal in that if enough people start to suffer from ill health, does that make it normal? I guess um, but realistically, that's what we're talking about here. And so, yeah, some of that will just be people you know trying to give me packaged food, and I'm just like, and usually I'll take it because I know I can give it to somebody else. But what if I was actually hungry and they think they're helping me by giving me something to eat, and I might be looking at the food like, look, man, like, yeah, I can eat this, but I don't know if this is going to come out the other end. You know, I mean, that's the trick. We, we got to get it to come out the other end properly. That's the thing, you know, and that's not a given, as many folks know. And then this idea of, some people are, I've never been a bathroom humor type of guy, but some people find bathroom humor to just be hilarious. And Howard Stern always had this thing about toilet humor. And one of his fascinations around fat people was he assumed that because they eat a lot of food, they must poop a lot. But I think it's actually the opposite. I'm pretty sure that once a person gets to such bad health, they actually don't go much at all, which I know it seems counterintuitive because it's like, well, how are they eating all this food, but they're barely pooping? I don't know. But that does seem to be the case. And then it also reminds me of Toilet Bowl Earth, TBE. One of the last times I talked to him, got into it with him about Taco Bell a little bit. And, because I was attacking him to some extent, more or less like, hey, some version of your life's in shambles, but like, look at what you're doing to yourself, And I didn't say it that way, but I'm sure that was my point, because I know he's on record about his love for Taco Bell. And my thing is basically like, hey, bro, that's not even really food. And then him wanting to, ridicule and gaslight me about the nutritional value or lack thereof of Taco Bell. But then a couple of weeks later, I hear that he had admitted at a certain point he hadn't pooped in like 10 days. But I'm the crazy person for suggesting Taco Bell's not food. Meanwhile, I go at least once every 24 hours, no matter what. Now, is that hasn't been the case for maybe more than the last 6 months or so, but I know when I got to LA, that really wasn't working that well. And I don't mean this time. I mean, when I came here and slept in my car, that was one of the many accomplishments during that time. You know, I got to where I was able to go to the bathroom normally on a regular basis, you know, and just, again, what a blessing, right? Uh, and then look at what people will tolerate, again, based on what their desires and their preferences. Oh, well, but I like Taco Bell. It's like, yeah, I have things I like too. Like, there's all sorts of delicious, like walnuts and pecans, and I could easily eat a fucking 1 pound bag of, I could just go to the Whole Foods or whatever and get a pound of mixed nuts. You know, I could eat a pound of mixed nuts in a day. I can't poop them out, right? So what does the fact that I like to eat walnuts and pecans and cashews and macadamias. Now that's even if I can even chew carefully enough not to destroy what's left of my teeth, but you know, uh, and that's come back. My teeth are way fucking stronger than they were even a year ago, I would say. Mm, way fucking stronger. I mean, imagine being so malnourished that I'm biting down on my soft ass teeth and realizing, wow, my teeth are soft because I've been deprived of nutrition for so fucking long. That the goddamn minerals in my body has had to repurpose the minerals in my fucking teeth, right? And to kind of transition to a different topic, back to the money and the business and all of this, you know, I've had a thought several times recently. Oh well, why not go play poker? Well, it's like because I've lost the desire to play poker, and um, I don't. I no longer find that to be an environment that I choose to be in. To go to a card room and forget about the online stuff. That's pretty much a no go across the board at this point. But now I don't have the bankroll, but you know, I could have left my job and immediately, and I still could go play poker, but to me, it's not even worth it to even go potentially win the money. Like that's how undesirable of an undertaking it would be, you know. And much of life is that. It's like, yeah, I understand that there's, I like money and everybody needs money, and that is a way. Now, without a proper bankroll, I would have to get lucky, right? Luck would be a factor also, but it is a skill. But I have no desire to deal with whatever that would be. And it's like, yeah, do I have a desire sometimes to eat a bunch of walnuts? It's like, yeah, I do. And in fact, a couple of times I found like a whole fucking 1 pound bag of walnuts. And after overeating them a couple of different times and suffering for day after day after day, I realized, well, yeah, the fact that my body finds these delicious and wants me to eat a bunch of them, yeah, so what? Same thing with Taco Bell. Yeah, yeah, I understand people like Taco Bell. How is that a justification for eating it? Right? It's like, yeah, I like walnuts. I know from experience I can't poop the walnuts out anything more than a small amount, a very small amount. So what does it matter? So you have somebody like TBE not eating Taco Bell and not pooping for 10 days and but somehow unable to make the connection. Is it really that crazy to consider that maybe the not pooping for 10 days is a result of the Taco Bell? I mean, call me crazy, you know. if I eat, you know, 12 ounces of fucking walnuts and then I can't poop for 4 days, you know, doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. Oh, but I like walnut. And that's what the person will say, like they're a child. Oh, but I like Taco Bell. Oh, okay. Well, you like Taco Bell. So I guess there's just no more pooping for you because you like Taco Bell. Right. And that, I mean, that really is the mentality of folks. Like, oh, okay. Well, all right. I didn't realize I was talking to a 7-year-old. Oh, okay. Well, you like Taco Bell. Okay, good. Well, as you were then, enjoy not pooping. Right. Anyway, I'm sure I've got more topics. What's up, Thunder Chicken? Well, and see, that's the thing, Jake. And that's interesting. Jake says, there I sat, lonely hearted, tried to shit and only farted. You know, the fact is, if somebody goes into a bathroom and sits down and it doesn't start happening almost immediately, something's wrong. Something's wrong somewhere, right? Um, I got to where with truck driving, I couldn't even go into the truck stop bathroom because they was in there heavy breathing. Because they're on death's door. These truckers are on death's door, obese, right? Can't poop, all backed up, and they're in there grunting and straining, trying to push it out. It's like, well, wait a minute. Now that I've been restored to health, and now that I'm eating proper foods, I go into the toilet. Uh, it all happens pretty quickly. We're in and out of there fairly quickly, right? It does not take a lot of time. But that's almost considered abnormal. It's almost like it taking 30 minutes and having to strain and grunt and sweat and all of that. That seems to be considered normal. It's like it's the food, people. It's the food. And I've actually put on. I haven't weighed myself, but I put on some weight recently. Now some of it has been fat, certainly. Um, I don't know what I might go weigh myself today. Maybe we'll see. Um, but when I was in San Francisco, uh, and it's funny, people want to bitch about big cities and want to talk about, oh, blue cities this, blue cities that. If you have money, right? If you've got money in your pocket and you want to go if you want to go purchase some prepared food that's highly nutritious and also delicious that will nourish your physical body, y'all ain't getting that where y'all live. You can't just wander into somewhere and say, here's my money. I want some delicious, nutritious food. That don't exist where you live. Now, maybe one or two spots. You know where that does exist all day, everywhere a person goes? Somewhere like San Francisco, just delicious, nutritious food right there. Oh, here you go, have it. And people who aren't city folk or who don't spend time in cities, they have no conception of that. Yeah, the food's better in the cities. I hate to break it to you. Now, yeah, if you have a homestead and you're growing your own food and you're trading with your neighbors I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I grew up in the middle part of the country. Almost everybody I knew went to the motherfucking grocery store and went to fast food. And I'm here to tell you that food is nowhere near as nutritious and delicious as what I was eating wandering around San Francisco. And my body was like, hell yeah. And I pigged out and put on some weight, and it's some solid weight. And at a certain point, um, maybe it happened during the truck driving. I don't know what happened, but at a certain point I was like, oh shit, I got leg muscles again. I was like it's probably walking up those hills in San Francisco. I was like, I got so used to not having leg muscles. I was like, fuck, wait a minute. I said, there's leg muscles down there now. Damn, when did that happen? You know, and I'm definitely got a little bit of my strength back. Not a lot, but I got a little bit of it back. My strength. So I made a commitment to myself when I first started dropping my bulk that I would not allow myself to become skinny fat. So I do have to watch it and make sure I don't put on too much fat. Basically, as long as I put on a pound of muscle, I can stand putting on a pound of fat. But anything beyond that ain't gonna work. And muscle memory is a thing, thankfully, because it's not like I've been working out or doing any sort of resistance training. But once a person has gained a significant amount of muscle mass, if they then lose the muscle mass, it's much easier for them to regain it than it was to build it initially, if that makes sense. Well, see, I disagree, Rebecca Joe. I reject your premise out of hand. See, Rebecca Joe says it's not that I like money. I like electricity, gas, food, roof, so we worked. Well, that's simply not true, Rebecca Joe. Because if that was true, you would work the exact amount that would pay for the electricity, the gas, the food, and the roof. And then you would stop working. See, what you're doing is you're not allowing for preference. See, and it's we have to work because we like to live in a house. We like to eat food, right? But number one, a Christian can't have that. A person can't be a Christian, a Bible believing Christian, and subscribe to that belief. It's mutually exclusive because the Bible says, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and their Lord takes care of them anyway. Are you not of greater value than they? See, there's nothing in the Bible about if you don't work, you don't eat. So what we get into is people who want to be seen as pious, who want to be seen as, and I'm not picking on Rebecca Joe, I'm picking on the idea here. It's, they don't want to be seen, they want to be seen as a certain way. We're pious, we're humble, right? We're the salt of the earth types. And, this is how we provide for our families. But, that's one thing. But what about the 1980s, right? Because I have memories of the consumerism of the 1980s and the early 1990s. I have memories of the TV advertising of the 1980s, the TV commercials, right? And I remember food product after food product after food product, and it was all preference. See, I remember toy brand after toy brand after toy brand, and it was all preference. But it's easy for a person to lie to themselves and say, oh, well, I don't like money. I don't like consumption. I don't like affluence. No, we like the basics. We like to be able to sustain ourselves at a basic level, right? Well, and number two, we're back to fear. It's this fear of, again, what wouldn't Jesus do, Rebecca Joe? What wouldn't Jesus do if he was here? That's way more interesting than what would Jesus do. Because I'm here to tell you, Jesus absolutely would not go to work every day to make these rich people richer and then justify it and go, well, it's not that I like money. It's that I like this roof over my head. And, we want to have heat and all of these, basic survival, right? It's just our basic survival. Well, but then, so you're telling me there was no television? There was certainly no cable television because that would be a luxury. So the television would have been a luxury, right? So there was no television in the home. There certainly was no cable television in the home, right? because that would have been a luxury. There was no VCR in the home because that's for entertainment, right? And we don't like entertainment. We like a roof over our heads. See, we don't like video games and Nintendo Entertainment System and Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. We like electricity. See. Meanwhile, how many people live their whole life without electricity? I mean, is that a necessity? You have to have electricity? I'm not sure that's a given. To survive? Maybe in some areas. I don't know. I'm almost certain that survival's possible, generally speaking, in the lower 48. You know, even without electricity, if one is properly supplied and equipped, right? So now we're just lying to ourselves in a very flippant fashion. That's flippant. Oh, we don't have preferences around consumption. We just like to have a roof over our heads, and we like to be able to eat, gruel, right? So if you actually set the bar at we want to sleep indoors with heat, because remember, historically, it wouldn't have been air conditioning, it would have been heat to not die, right? So we want to live indoors because I went, my junior high school was not air conditioned, folks, in Arkansas. When I went to seventh grade in motherfucking Arkansas in August, there was no air conditioning in the building. Okay. So you can't tell me, there's not a lot you can tell me about this stuff, right? So you go enough into a depression era mindset, you go enough into frugality. Oh, we're paying for heating oil or we're paying to heat the building. We're not paying to air condition this motherfucker. That wasn't that long ago in America, folks. Because my junior high had heat. It didn't have air conditioning. It had heat. Right. Because hypothetically, I guess somebody could maybe freeze to death. Hypothetically, I don't know. Who even knows what the reason was? But do you see what I'm talking about with this mindset? It's a mindset, and it's a lie that people tell to themselves. That's just and again, I'm not trying to pick on the commenter. I'm trying to pick on the way of thinking. Because believe me, I've suffered from my own versions of that way of thinking. And I was as normy as it could be, other than the Jehovah's Witness layer, I was a normie as fuck for a long ass time. Very, very normy. So I get it. Right. And then it's also a depression era mindset of it, like there's something bad or wrong about being seen as someone desirous of money. Oh, that's greedy, right? Oh, well, that's greedy. Well, I mean, is it? I don't know. I mean, I guess it could be greedy. I thought the American dream and the American ethos was always that people wanted to see their children do better than they did, right? Isn't that going to involve money? I mean, call me crazy. And then just this notion of, again, the basics of life. The fact is, now I understand a lot of people will tie this to families, right? But do you think there's not families right now that are existing, uh, you know, homeless or without these basic necessities? Of course there are, right? Or at least existing outside of normal society, right? Although it's become normal, it's certainly become normal. But so again, to me, that's a very flippant, unexamined way of approaching part of life, which is, oh, yes, we don't like money. We like these very basic things that, I don't know. Are you telling me it's impossible to get food? It's impossible to have shelter, and it's impossible to have these basic things without money? I'm not sure that's true. I bet if a person was motivated enough, I bet you they could figure out how to get all of those things without having money whatsoever. I bet you it's possible, right? But again, there has to be a reason the person's lying to themselves in the first place. What's the reason for the lie? See, the person has to be benefiting from telling themselves a lie. It's to continue to behave like everybody else behaves in a keeping up with the Joneses, right? In a consuming like our neighbors consume, but it's in a culture of we still have sort of these leftover vestiges of the Depression era mindset. So we're going to be careful not to have it look like we're being too flashy or we're putting on of airs. And this is where you get the phenomenon of you can have a person who can go to a Ford dealership or a Ram dealership or a Chevy dealership, and they can have a loan and a payment on an $85,000 brand new diesel dually pickup truck, and that will be viewed as normal and expected and okay because it's a pickup truck. But a person could buy a $30,000 used Mercedes and they're putting on airs. The person from the seat of their $85,000 pickup truck will look down their nose at the person in the $30,000 Mercedes because the person in the $30,000 Mercedes is choosing to engage with a luxury brand, a brand that has that's viewed a certain type of way, but it's a third of the cost. It's one third of the cost of the pickup truck, but it's putting on air. Oh, it's not that. So the person in the $85,000 pickup truck can continue to say, "Well, I don't like money." That person in the Mercedes likes money, and I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. The person in the Mercedes is spending. You're spending three times the amount of money on your vehicle that the person in the Mercedes is spending. So, like, what levels of lying to ourselves is going on here, right? Meanwhile, what's wrong with just saying I like money? What's wrong with that? Like, how could there ever be something wrong with liking money? Oh, but that's right, because in a book is written, the love of money is the root of all evil. Oh, and doesn't that tie into what I said about this realm being a delusory adversarial realm of business? The love of money is the root of all evil, right? What better description of this place other than the love of money and the root of all evil? I mean, what else does a person really need to know about this place that they find themselves in? I mean, what else is there to know other than that, right? And like I said, I envy some of these homeless people because at two different times. Now, one guy I think was just so crazy. I don't think he even understood what he was doing. I tried to give this particularly homeless guy a $20 bill and he wouldn't take it. But between his age and his lack of corrective vision, he didn't have any glasses, and I'm not even sure he understood what was going on. But I had another fella recently try to give him a $5 bill. He turned his nose up at it. And I could see myself maybe even eventually getting to that level where it's just I'm not even involved with money whatsoever. Right. Again, and would that be progress at a certain point? Like what am I going to do with that? It's like thanks, but what's that going to do? Right. Or it's like, well, thanks, but now I have to go into a store and deal with whatever's going on in there. Now I got to go involve myself in business, right? And more, I'm viewing business itself as so unseemly. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someday I won't like money solely based on my attitudes towards business in general, right? Because isn't that what money is? A unit of business, right? I mean, without business, what need would there be for the money? You know, what's up, Grills? Yeah, greetings from the slave ship. Well, and that's back to the idea of cursing a blessing. It's the idea that let's take the master, right? The master of all masters, the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit, and let's see if we can get it to do an imitation of a slave, right? And, I'm pretty much to the point where I don't know that I'm going to be capable of doing that imitation. And I just don't know that I seem to be losing the capability. It's like with this truck driving. I can't even express to you. Now, the first couple of weeks weren't that quite as easy because I hadn't, you know, I didn't quite yet have the experience of the true knowledge of self. But once the true knowledge of self kicked in, I'm here to tell you it was almost too easy, the truck driving. And I mean, compared to what it was in the past, it was just too easy. But then here's what was difficult was being treated like a machine, right? And recognizing, oh, this really is the transition to the trucks driving themselves. Which what I mean by that is this is the transition. The driver is in the process of exiting the industry, whether people acknowledge it or not, whether people recognize it or not. I would say the fact that it's not being talked about at all is pretty strong proof that it's an actual thing, right? Because if it was in fact maybe possibly going to happen, but maybe not going to happen, I think it would at least be talked about. The fact that it's not talked about at all anywhere leads me to believe that is the smoke and the fire is the fact that yes, this absolutely is the transition, and that's why the markets have already adjusted to the fact that pretty fucking soon none of these companies are going to have to pay a driver, and that the markets have already adjusted the rates to that reality, right? And so that in the short term, these companies all understand that, well, this is the time to survive the transition, that's really all this is about. And more or less fuck the driver basically at this point. And it's always been a version of fuck the driver, but it's really fuck the driver now because it's like, hey, all the office personnel, they know on some level, whether it's in their conscious mind or not, they understand, and certainly the management would understand that, you know from their perspective of the office workers and the dispatchers and the safety people and all of this, the maintenance folks, they're not going to be dealing with a driver pretty soon. They're not going to be dealing with texting and driving. They're not going to be dealing with distracted driving. They're not going to be dealing with, oh, this person, they didn't fulfill the legal requirements of their logs or whatever, they got put out of service, whatever. They didn't properly inspect the equipment. That shit's all about to be a thing of the past, right? At least in the form of trucking that I do, the bottom of the barrel, dry van, 53-foot dry van, right? And the last phase, I'm convinced the very last phase will be, it's just going to be people who, like myself, have proven that I'm able to do the job. I'm able to pass a background check, you know, uh, I'm trustworthy with the equipment and the value of the load, but that the major attraction of the job is that I need a place to live on some level and I can live in a truck, right? But even for me, it's gotten to where involving myself in business at all has become so unappealing that it's actually, that part of it is overpowering the upside, where it's like, yeah, okay, it is a way to sort of insulate myself from the public. It's a way to, you know, have a place to lay my head, get proper rest, have the money to buy the specific foods and supplements and such, right? Yeah, it's a way to do all of that. And that is going to be, and I think that's what we're going to see is, especially once the self-driving trucks are a little more talked about and a little less of a taboo topic, I think you are going to have a group of people who more or less are in trucking just because that they're sort of just versions of outcasts where that's just kind of their way of functioning in society. Is like they're just going to choose to do that, right? And and I've talked about this a lot on this channel, but it does, and it bears repeating. Uh, what time is it? It's almost time for me to eat some apricots, but and it bears repeating. But um, shit, did I lose my point? I've talked about it a lot on the channel. What the hell was it? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Uh, Now I'm seeing I need to go to the restroom, but there's looks like a field trip. There's a bunch of kids, school children crossing the street, and I'm almost certain they're going directly to the bathrooms I was about to go to, which is fine, but it's kind of funny. I mean, where else would they be going? So 50 children, at least 10 of them got to go to the bathroom, right? But maybe not. Maybe not. See which way they're headed. What was I totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh well. Well, I can probably just finish up complaining about this last truck driving job, but this is the first time. The mom and pops. That was so historically, like when I went into trucking in 2018, it was still the idea was, well, you start with the big companies, the so-called mega carriers, because that's where because they will actually hire inexperienced. There's a Razorback on that car. You don't see that very often. A Razorback, and wonder if he's got not an Arky though, of course, but that was a conventional wisdom. And in my time in the industry, so it's get the experience with the big company, then as soon as possible go to a mom and pop, because that the conventional wisdom has been the working conditions are better, the money's better, the miles are better, right? And there's less being hassled about safety, right? And there's just less corporate hassle in general, right? It's more of the old school notion of just, here's the truck, here's the load, get it. Just, we don't really want to know. Just get it there, more or less, right? Get it there safely. Don't tear anything up. Don't get any tickets, and get it there, right? That shit's over with. I'm here to tell you. And I noticed it creeping in just in my time since 2018, right? It's now 2025. And it was fully there with this last company. I mean, driver facing camera, computer algorithms scrutinizing my body language. Where are my eyeballs looking? Do I have a phone in my hand? What am I doing? Right. And certainly sending reports to the company, right? Sending reports to the insurance company, right? And I'm sure some of that information is being used to teach the AI how to drive, right? Um, I do have a certain skill level as a driver. What is he looking at? Based on what are the road conditions, the speed of the vehicle, all of these things. And at this point, if I, for some reason, was going to continue to try to serve business and all of this. And I'm not saying never again. I'm just saying, it's looking like the bloom's off the rose for me in employment, which has kind of already been off the rose anyway. But I'm here to tell you, I would most likely go to the big company, go back to a mega carrier versus what I dealt with this last. And again, all companies are bad. There's no such thing as a good company. We pick our poison as truck drivers. They're all bad from the perspective of the driver. All long haul truckers are disgruntled on some level. Every single one of them, right? That's just across the board. But you see how it's already been flipped on its head, because all of that, all of the nanny cam, all of the nanny state, all of the intrusive, truck driving itself, safety features, automatic braking, lane departure warnings. Oh, you're following too close. All of that technology ends up getting pioneered by the mega carriers, but it all trickles down to the mom and pops. So now that the mom and pops have all that same bullshit, right? Why wouldn't I just go work for the big company? But now, what does the mom and pop say? See, and now you want to talk about the slave ship, right? You want to talk about the greetings from the slave ship. Well, see, a lot of this comes down to money. So the industry perpetuates this idea that, well, okay, Benton, maybe it's true what you're saying, that a lot of this undesirable intrusive stuff has trickled down to small companies, but the fact is, an experienced driver is still more likely to get more miles on average in a given week for the small company than the big company. And I say you're right. And I would prefer to drive less miles, not more, because remember, my primary attractor to the job is that I live in the truck. My primary attractor is not that I get to drive more miles. In fact, it may come a time where the industry still needs enough meat in the seat to where they might say, hey, Benton, we know you only want to drive 1,800 miles a week. Here's your truck. Go for it. Right. But now it's still based on that idea of, well, of course, every long haul trucker wants as many miles as possible. It's like, no, I don't. Absolutely not. Once I proved to myself that I could run a certain amount of miles, at a level of endurance and just, juggling, whatever balls need to be in the air to make it, a 3,300 mile a week happen or whatever on a regular basis. Once I develop those skills, absolutely not. I'd rather, 2,500 miles would be fine, but I could live on 1,800, no problem. Right? What do I need 3,300 miles a week for? But then now we're back to that American ethos of, well, this is how you get ahead, as you struggle and you work hard and you outwork the other guy and this and that. But it's like, that's not what rich people do. Now, maybe that's how if this is generational wealth, maybe that's how the family originally, that's part of how it originally positioned itself, maybe, was through outworking other people in part. But that's not the entirety of the story. It's not blood, sweat, and tears, and we put our nose to the grindstone and we outworked everybody. Like Amazon is not, larger than Walmart now because it outworked its competition. That's nonsense. Like, that's not what happened. It's not hard work that led to them being larger than Walmart. That's insane to even believe that for a second. That's simply not what happened. But again, Americans are out here in a delusory adversarial realm of business with a bunch of poppycock poppycock notions that are simply not true, like the virtue of hard work. Hard work performed in service of a corporation that's already rich. How can that ever be a virtue? How can I be virtuous because I've worked really hard and the end result is an organization that was already wealthy became slightly more wealthy as a result of my virtuous hard work? Does that make any sense to anybody anywhere? Well, yeah, it does if everybody has internalized mind control such that they believe that to validate their worth as a human being, every single day they need to roll out of bed and bust their hump in business. And I'm here to tell you, what wouldn't Jesus do if he was here? Jesus would not be here busting his hump on a daily basis to prove his worth to a delusory adversarial realm of business. That would never happen, folks. But that's what I'm expected to do by people like Mr. Miyagi. Fully expects me to validate my worth as a man and as an American and as a human being on at least a Monday through Friday and probably Saturday and maybe Sunday basis, that I must do that on a regular basis or I have no value. Well, doesn't it make sense? Isn't that further evidence for my assertion that this is a delusory adversarial realm of business? That is the function of this place? Is that my worth can only be measured in how vigorously am I willing to toil on an ongoing basis? And in fact, we need Benton to have done that toil already today. It's 9 o'clock, sir. It's after 9 o'clock. When are you going to begin the day's toil? To do what? To consecrate myself, to wash myself of my sins of laziness, right? Because again, I'm if I'm willing to internalize those notions, that's to curse my blessing. Because remember, Christ was here. If a person believes the Bible, that means Christ was here, and Christ was representative of what? Blessing. Christ was the blessing in the flesh. And so why would the blessing come here in the flesh and then say, well, I better trip all over myself in a big fat hurry in an almost comical fashion to prove my mettle, mettle, to this realm and all the people in it, that I'm worth my salt and I pull my weight, right? Because I make a big damn show of busting my hump. Well, I don't know. The Lord supposedly came down here and didn't bother with any of it. Why would I? Why would I? They say, oh, well, you ain't him. Well, what I am is one with what it was one with or is one with, as far as I can tell. So you're going to tell me what's good for the goose ain't good for the gander? So you're going to tell me that, oh, we got content creators in the space that love to go on and on about how we're all one at the highest level, right? Whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. But I can't ever claim to be one with the same force that supposedly spoke the words, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, right? And what I believe to be, that was Christ's consciousness attempting to communicate the idea, hey, bozos, if you want to get to know exactly what the fuck you are, deep down inside your own sphere of influence, you're not ever going to get to that point within yourself until you first access Christ consciousness. No one comes unto source or the Father except through me or Christ consciousness, right? And these should not even be revolutionary ideas, right? But it sounds like these sound like revolutionary ideas as I listen to myself say them. It sounds revolutionary. Now, some would say, well, actually, it sounds like somebody who just wants to get out of doing any work. It's like, well, yeah, except that's a strange damn way to go about it, is to have established such a strong track record of busting my ass for so many years, right? In so many menial uh, jobs, right? Humbly, right? So it's kind of a strange way to go about it, right? Crazy like a fox, I guess. Yeah, here, I'll trick them. They'll never figure out how strong my desire for laziness is after I bust my ass for 20 fucking straight years, right? Or whatever that was, you know. I'm gonna rope it. Watch me rope a dope them. Anyway, I guess we're done. Thanks for watching. Bye.